Coruscant was never meant to sleep. That was the first lie we all agreed to live with. The towers pierced the clouds, the skylanes glowed in layered ribbons of light, and somewhere far below the traffic and holodes and Senate broadcasts, there was still a planetary core trying to remember it was once rock and fire and silence. We paved over that memory with durasteel and transparasteel, with credits and bureaucracy and the comforting noise of 10 trillion lives insisting that this endless, roaring now would last forever. We told ourselves that as long as the lights stayed on above, nothing truly terrible could come from below. I worked in infrastructure oversight, level 5127, Sector Auric. That sounds more important than it is. In reality, it meant reviewing energy flow charts, structural stability reports, and maintenance logs for levels so deep the sunlight was a rumor. On most days, my universe was numbers, voltage fluctuations, coolant output, mass density readings from supports that had been ancient long before the Republic was born. Coruscant is a planet made into a machine, and machines need caretakers. We were those caretakers, invisible, underpaid, and absolutely certain that everything could be fixed, given enough time, enough credits, enough patches of duracrete over the cracks. The first anomaly came in as a simple status flag. Core mantle layer, seismic irregularity detected. It was so small the system almost discarded it as noise. Coruscant doesn't have earthquakes. It has structural failures, collapsing sectors, overloaded reactors, things with serial numbers and maintenance schedules. Natural tremors are for worlds that still remember oceans and forests. Still, procedure is procedure, so the alert hit my terminal with a soft chime, no more dramatic than a reminder to refill a caf mug. The data was odd. Not an impact signature, not a reactor breach. The wave pattern didn't match any of the usual culprits. No construction blast, no sabotage, no starship crash. Just a deep, slow shudder, as if something inside the planet had shifted slightly and then settled again. The oscillation curve looked almost deliberate, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. I filed the report. I flagged it for a higher level tech. I attached a small note. Recommend physical inspection of deep access shaft network in affected region. Then I did what everyone on Coruscant does when faced with something unsettling and vaguely impossible. I moved on to the next report. The second anomaly came 3 hours later. This time, it was an energy spike in a forgotten section of the Undercity, a place where the mapping files were older than the Republic itself, patched and repatched until the original data was more myth than record. The spike was narrow, precise, and disturbingly clean. No rise in ambient heat, no reactor startup, no power reroute, just a sudden, focused surge of energy from a point that, according to our maps, was nothing but support frameworks and empty maintenance corridors. We sent a drone first. We always send a drone first. It descended through layers of rusting platforms and hanging cables, its holofeed flickering as it slipped beneath levels that hadn't seen an organic inspector in generations. Graffiti gave way to fungus, fungus gave way to bare stone and metal. Human life faded out of focus, replaced by structural bones, pillars and beams driven down into the old planetary crust, holding up a civilization that no longer remembered it even had a crust. At first, the feed showed nothing out of the ordinary. Dust motes, flaking paint, the dull sheen of old alloy. Then the drone's external sensors registered something new, trace radiation, frequency outside standard reactor profiles. The visual picked it up next. A faint, unnatural green. It was just a glimmer at first, like a reflection that had no source. The light seemed to seep from a hairline crack in the rock, down where the support beams anchored into the planetary mantle. As the drone approached, the glimmer intensified, not like a lamp growing brighter, but like something waking up. The crack widened almost imperceptibly, and something crystalline pushed its way into the airless space, growing in jagged, angular shards. The drone's instruments went haywire. Mass density readings spiked and dipped in impossible ways. Atmospheric composition flagged unknown particulates. Energy levels rose again, not simply radiating from the crystal, but interacting with the surrounding matter, rewriting it on a level the drone was never designed to understand. The holofeed camera strained to compensate, lines of static crawling across the image as that green light drilled into the lens, into the signal, into us. Probably some kind of illicit reactor dump, my supervisor muttered, leaning over my shoulder. Black market lab, maybe. We'll log it as hazardous contamination and get a specialized team down there next cycle. On the screen, the crystal grew. Slowly, steadily, with the patient inevitability of a rising tide. We quarantined the feed. We slapped digital red tape over the anomaly. We told ourselves the same old soothing things, that this was someone's illegal experiment gone wrong, that the Republic would find them, shut them down, and clean it up, that it was a problem with a form to fill and a budget code to charge. We didn't have a category for planetary infection in our system. We had localized incident. The third anomaly didn't show up in our logs. It showed up in the lower levels themselves. Night on Coruscant isn't darkness, it's just a different shade of light. But in the deep places, where levels have collapsed and never been rebuilt, where the city's arteries have clotted with wreckage and forgotten tunnels, there are pockets of true shadow. People live there, not officially, not legally, but they live. Smugglers, refugees, gangs, those who slipped through the cracks and decided the cracks were safer than the surface. They were the first to touch it. We heard about it as rumors, whispers on private channels, unverified distress signals, half-corrupted recordings. A frightened voice talking about glass growing out of the floor, about metal turning into crystal, about a man who tried to chip a piece off and watched his tools soften and twist, eaten away by green light. There was a clip, shaky, low resolution, shot on some black market holocam. It showed a corridor half swallowed by jagged growths, like frozen emerald lightning, bursting from floor and wall and ceiling. The geometry was wrong, angles that hurt the eye, reflections where no light sources existed, surfaces that seemed to extend deeper than their physical dimensions allowed, as if each shard were a window into something colder and hungrier. In the middle of the frame, a maintenance droid lay on its side, half encased in translucent green. Its metal shell was being rewritten, veins of crystal threading through its chassis, fusing circuitry and unknown mineral into a new, horrifying unity. Its photoreceptors still glowed, flickering weakly, trapped inside a sculpture that was still growing. We were not supposed to see that clip, but data leaks in a city this big. Systems talk to each other even when they're told not to. Someone in security tried to bury it, and in doing so, sent it accidentally through our department's filters. For a few seconds, before it was scrubbed and sealed, it lived on my screen. Tiberium. Someone labeled it in an anonymous tag just before the file was locked. Not in any language I recognized, not in any official classification, just a word attached like a curse. After that, things began to move faster, but not fast enough. Local patrols were dispatched and disappeared from the grid. Quarantine orders were written and delayed for authorization. Senators argued about jurisdiction. Was this an infrastructure problem, a security issue, a Jedi matter, or something for the Science Council? Every second, the green light kept pushing outward, growing quietly in the silence between signatures and approvals. I started to notice little changes in the data. Energy flow routes adjusting themselves, as if the system were being rebalanced from below. Structural stress readings subtly shifting along deep support frameworks, like weight redistributing itself in response to a new, unseen load. Sensors returning null values, not because they were broken, but because what they were trying to measure didn't fit inside the equations they were built with. One of the Jedi assigned to liaise with infrastructure came by our sector, a tall knight with tired eyes and a calm voice. He didn't ask about the numbers that were supposedly his reason for being there. Instead, he asked a strange question. Has anyone here felt wrong lately? As if there were a note out of tune beneath everything. I thought about the crystal on the feed, about the way its light seemed to hum silently, like a chord you could feel in your bones but not hear. About the tremor in my hands when I replayed the recording in my head, long after the file had been erased. I almost told him. Instead, I shook my head and told him the reports were being handled, that the Senate was coordinating a response, that everything was under control. Because that is the second lie Coruscant teaches you. If you say everything is under control enough times, you might almost believe it. That night, if you can call the subtle dimming of the skylanes night, I went home to my cramped apartment on level 5127 and stared out at the endless city. From up here, nothing had changed. Traffic still flowed in glowing rivers, holodes still screamed for attention, the Senate dome still gleamed like a promise no one intended to keep. It was all so normal that it felt like an insult. Then, just for a moment, I saw it. Far below, much deeper than my eyes should have been able to follow, there was a point of light that did not belong. Not the cold white of durasteel spotlights, not the warm pulse of habitation windows, not the flicker of exhaust plumes. A faint, steady green, burning up from the depths. By morning, there would be official statements and carefully worded denials. There would be containment zones and redacted reports, and perhaps even a quiet directive to stop asking questions and log everything under classified structural anomaly. But in that quiet, stolen moment between one routine day and the next, I understood something simple and terrible. Coruscant had stopped being just a city built on a world. The world itself had been touched, claimed, and set on a different path. The first Tiberium crystal had bloomed in the dark, and with it, the heart of the Republic had started to change, not loudly, not violently, not yet. Just a new color in the spectrum of our doom, growing brighter by the hour. That was the night the planet began to dream in green. Coruscant has always been a world of noise, a constant, living roar that drowns out everything else. But when the first Jedi teams descended into the Undercity to investigate what we now called the Green Anomaly, the noise changed. It felt thinner, hollow, as if a deeper silence were waiting beneath it, patient and hungry. Jedi Knight Ceres Valen led the first sanctioned descent. She was known for her composure, her clarity, her ability to sense disturbances in the Force long before they manifested in the physical world. Yet even she hesitated when the turbolift doors opened onto level 9989, a place so deep that the sun might as well never have existed. The air greeted them first, stale, metallic, tinged with an acrid sharpness that clung to the back of the throat. The shadows moved strangely, stretching a little too far, retreating a little too slowly. The Force was still present but wrong, tilted, distorted, as though reflecting through a cracked mirror. Valen closed her eyes, inhaling softly. "The Force is muted," she murmured. Muted was not the right word, and they all felt it. It wasn't simply weakened, it had been pushed aside, displaced by some other presence that did not belong to the living galaxy. They walked deeper. The corridor walls bore the scars of age and abandonment. Entire support pillars lay in heaps of dust and rust flakes, but none of that worried the Jedi. What worried them were the patches where metal no longer looked like metal. Portions of the wall had begun to turn translucent, green-tinted, threaded with crystalline veins pulsing faintly, like the slowed heartbeat of a creature dreaming just beneath the surface. Padawan Lyra reached out a hand, a rookie mistake. The crystal pulsed. The hum in the air shifted. "Don't touch it," Valen snapped, pulling the girl back. A soft crackling sound echoed through the corridor. The Jedi ignited their sabers instantly, blue and green light reflecting off the crystal surfaces in warped streaks. Something moved. Not fast, not hostile, but alive. A filament of green extruded itself from the wall, growing in a slow, spiraling motion, like a vine searching for sunlight. The Jedi stepped back instinctively. "It reacts to proximity," Master Sol Quora observed. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a tremor of unease, as if it's curious. Curious. That was the kindest interpretation. They continued forward, guided by flickering emergency lights and the unsettling luminescence of the Tiberium shards, now appearing more frequently, growing thicker, larger, sharper. Some pieces were small enough to be confused with mineral growth. Others had already formed clusters the size of starfighters. "This is not natural," Sol Quora whispered, "and it is not inert." A few meters ahead, the glow intensified. A collapsed maintenance tunnel opened into a vast chamber, perhaps once part of an ancient heat exhaust system. Now it was something else entirely. The entire space shone with emerald crystal. A cathedral of Tiberium. Pillars of translucent green rose from floor to ceiling, their surfaces etched with fractal patterns that shifted when observed indirectly. The chamber hummed with an energy that made every molecule of air vibrate. The Jedi staggered. The Force recoiled. Padawan Lyra gasped, clutching at her head. "Master, I can't hear the Force." Her eyes widened with the terror of someone losing a sense they had never imagined could fade. "It's gone. There's something in the way." Valen steadied her, though she herself felt the same suffocating quiet pressing against her mind. The Force wasn't gone, it was being smothered. Not by darkness, not by light, by something completely alien. Sol Quara stepped closer to a pillar, examining the energy readings on his wrist console as the device flickered violently. This material interacts with the Force, but not as the dark side does. It doesn't corrupt, it overwrites. A chilling thought settled over them. Tiberium could one day suppress the Force entirely. Before anyone could respond, the chamber trembled. A deep sound resonated from the crystal structures, a rhythmic, pulsing vibration, like a voice calling from extremely far away or extremely deep below. The Jedi froze. The hum grew louder. The surface of the largest crystal column rippled. Then something shifted behind the crystalline skin, like a silhouette swimming through green liquid. It wasn't life. It wasn't consciousness. It was intention. Valen's hand tightened on her saber. "Everyone fall back. Now." The chamber pulse quickened, and the crystals grew not slowly this time, but violently, erupting upward like frozen explosions. The ground cracked. A wave of green light swept outward, bending the metal floor plates like soft cloth. The Jedi leapt backward as the chamber attempted to consume them. Chunks of Tiberium burst from the ground, forming spines, jagged branches, crystalline tendrils. A sharp shard sliced through Master Quara's arm, not cutting so much as fusing to his skin, spreading microscopic green filaments. "Get it off," he shouted, but the material clung like liquid glass. Valen reacted instantly, slicing the infected flesh away with her saber. The odor of burning tissue mixed with the bitter scent of the crystal. Quara gasped, pale and shaking. "We're leaving. Now." They sprinted toward the exit as the chamber collapsed behind them, crystal swallowing metal, stone, circuitry, everything. The collapse seemed deliberate, like the closing of a great emerald mouth. When they finally reached the surface levels, gasping, shaken, and half-blinded by real light again, Valen issued the report herself. "This is not merely contamination. This is not a substance. This is an intrusion into our reality itself. And if it continues to grow, the Force will fall silent." It was the first time in recorded history that the Jedi Council heard the word Tiberium and understood instinctively that it was not merely a threat. It was a challenger to the very concept of life in the Star Wars galaxy. A new kind of will, a new kind of hunger, and Coruscant, the jewel of the Republic, was becoming its throne. Ban Mung Toi Viet Teep Part 3, 900 Tunsu, Ban Da Noi, Part S. Chat GPT Da Noi, Part Ear, the Sith see opportunity in the green. 700, 900 words, tone, dark, cold, calculating, ominous, gritty, cinematic narration. For the Jedi, the anomaly beneath Coruscant was a wound in the Force. For the Sith, it was a revelation. On the volcanic world of Mustafar, far from the Senate's denials and the Jedi Council's frightened whispers, the first encrypted recordings of the Tiberium chambers flickered across the holoscreens of a hidden Sith enclave. Green crystal spires, humming with unnatural power. A cathedral grown out of nothing. Force silencing echoes, an energy signature that twisted physics and biology alike. To the Jedi, it was a threat. To the Sith, it was proof. Proof that power did not need to be inherited through lineage, meditation, or ancient dogma. Power could be grown. It could be harvested. It could be made. Lord Verak, a tall, shadow-clad figure with carved crimson tattoos, stood before the projection, hands clasped behind his back. His voice was a low rasp, as if his throat were permanently scorched by Mustafarian soot. So, the Republic hides a miracle beneath its feet. His apprentice, a sharp-eyed woman named Darth Keelia, tilted her head. A miracle, or a weapon? Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the emerald shards on the holoscreen. Verak smiled. For the Sith, those two words are one and the same. The room hummed with the hum of Mustafar's volcanic machinery, but the green glow from the hollow projection drowned even that ambient heat. The Sith stood captivated. "You feel it, don't you?" Verak asked quietly. Keelia nodded. "It dims the Force, but it does not sever me from it. It feels like a competing current, a second river flowing beside the Force, one I might learn to step into." Verak's smile widened into something predatory. "Yes, the Jedi fear silence, but we seek new voices. A new voice, a new power, a new path to domination." The first experiment. The Sith were not content to observe. Within hours, they dispatched covert extraction teams to Coruscant, not to the surface where the Republic scrambled uselessly, but to the lower levels, those abandoned places where law was a suggestion and life was cheap. They returned with samples. Small shards at first, carried in vacuum-sealed containment cubes. Then larger clusters pulled from walls and trapped in stasis fields. And eventually, something more. A living victim, touched by the green. He was a thief, or perhaps a scavenger. The Sith did not bother to learn the distinction. Crystalline veins ran along his arms, creeping toward his chest. His eyes pulsed faintly, echoing the green light of the growths that had embedded into his bone. They placed him on a surgical slab. He did not scream. Tiberium had already claimed his voice. "He is alive?" Keelia asked, touching the crystallized skin. "Barely," Verak answered. "But look closer." She did, and the Force recoiled from the infected flesh, but did not vanish. No, it warped, it twisted. Keelia felt the echo through her fingertips, a strange parallel sensation, as if the infection were not consuming life but rewriting it. "This material evolves its host," she murmured. "It liberates them from weakness," Verak said smoothly. "This creature is no longer limited by organic frailty. Imagine Sith whose flesh is impervious to blaster fire, Sith who regenerate, Sith who cannot die, or Sith who are no longer Sith at all," Keelia countered softly. Verak's eyes glinted. "Sacrifices, my apprentice." He raised his hand. A needle-thin strand of lightning arced from his fingertips into the infected man's body. The crystal responded. It pulsed. It shivered. And then it grew. Tiberium spread across the man's torso in a living web, as if feeding on the energy. Verak stepped back in surprise. Even Keelia gasped. "It consumes the dark side," she whispered. "No," Verak corrected, voice trembling with excitement. "It amplifies it." The room echoed with the sickening crackle of growing crystal, spreading like wildfire across the slab. Verak extinguished the experiment before it could escape containment. A single stroke of his saber reduced the man to vapor, but the crystal remained, still humming, still alive, still whispering through the Force. "This changes everything," Keelia breathed. "Yes," Verak whispered. "Now imagine what it would do to us." The infection of ambition. Word spread quickly through the Sith network. Not publicly, the Sith never shared weapons until they understood them, but through encrypted channels, through rumors passed in meditation chambers, through visions seen in the dark side. Visions of black-armored warriors with green veins glowing beneath their skin. Visions of star destroyers plated with crystalline armor that devoured enemy fire. Visions of entire worlds reshaped into indestructible fortresses. Visions of immortality. The Sith had chased many forbidden powers. Alchemy, dark rituals, parasites from forgotten galaxies. But none were as pure, as mathematical, as inevitable as Tiberium. For the first time, even the holocrons felt inadequate. Keelia stood alone in the meditation chamber that night, staring into a shard she had stolen from the lab. It pulsed gently, like a living ember. When she reached out to touch it through the Force, she heard something. Not words, not thoughts. A hum, a vibration, a promise. The dark side whispered, "Take it, become more." Her breath quickened. Her palm hovered over the shard, but before she could touch it, Verak's voice echoed behind her. Even Sith must respect certain thresholds. She turned, startled. "You said its power is limitless." "Limitless things are the most dangerous," Verak replied. "Everything can be consumed, including us." Keelia watched him carefully. "You fear it." "I fear nothing," Verak hissed. "But I respect hunger when I see it." He gestured toward the shard. "That is not a source of power, apprentice. It is a predator, one that has not yet noticed us. When it does, I intend to be ready, not consumed." She studied the shard one last time, and in its depth, for a brief moment, she thought she saw something watching her. Something learning, something growing. The Sith declare their intent. By dawn, Verak sent a single encrypted message across the Sith network. Tiberium must not fall to the Jedi or the Republic. Its destiny is ours alone. But already, in secret laboratories, many Sith had begun experimenting on themselves. And far below Coruscant, the green light continued to grow. Listening, adapting, preparing. The Sith believed they were studying Tiberium. In truth, Tiberium was studying them. For days, Coruscant trembled under the weight of the impossible. For days, the Jedi whispered of a force growing silent. For days, the Sith dreamed of power blooming in green crystal. But Tiberium was never a phenomenon that visited worlds quietly. It was a signal, a cosmic flare, a scream through realities. And in another universe, one that had already bled for centuries beneath the green, something heard that scream. Something old. Something patient. Something that had been waiting for a breach in space-time large enough to exploit. The breach. It began as a disturbance above Coruscant, a shimmering tear in high orbit, like a piece of space being peeled open. Republic scanners failed to categorize it. Jedi masters felt their temples ache at its presence. Sith marveled at the raw power radiating from its edges. To galactic astronomers, it resembled an unstable hyperspace rift. To the Force, it felt like a wound. To Tiberium, it felt like home. The tear widened, energy arced out in spirals of electric blue. Then silence. A shape emerged. Massive, angular, burnished in metallic gold. A GDI Kodiak-class command ship, its hull scorched from the dimensional transit. And behind it, warships followed sleek Orca strike carriers, lumbering atmospheric landers, escort gunships. A fleet built not for exploration, but for containment. For worlds already drowning in the green. The Republic watched in stunned disbelief. The Jedi sensed confusion, fear, resolve. The Sith felt opportunity. But the rift had not finished speaking. It flared a second time, violent, pulsing red. The outlines that emerged were jagged, sinister, like blades carved from shadow. The Brotherhood of Nod had arrived. Obsidian-colored stealth cruisers, Gothic in architecture, marked with the crimson insignia of Cain. Slow-moving, predatory carriers with blacked-out windows. Tiberium barges modified into war barges. And at the center, the unmistakable triangular prow of a temple ship, a vessel built like a shrine to prophecy. Two fleets, two ideologies, two ancient enemies, drawn through the same wound in space, into a galaxy that had no idea what war truly looked like. First contact, shock and fire. The moment they stabilized, GDI sensors lit up with warnings. Unidentified world, high Tiberium signature, infection progression speed, aberrant, global density, extreme, estimate, complete biosphere collapse in is less than 36 hours. General Nathaniel Rourke of GDI stared at the readout with horror. Impossible. Coruscant is already at critical saturation? How? His science officer swallowed. Sir, This world isn't just infected. The planetary core is acting like a Tiberium generator. That's not possible. Neither is dimensional rupture, sir, but here we are. Before they could form a plan, Nod hailed them. The hologram flickered to life. A hooded figure emerged, face half hidden, voice rich and calm. Brothers of GDI, the Nod emissary greeted. We meet again. But this world is divine. A cradle prepared for ascension. Rourke clenched his jaw. Coruscant is inhabited. Billions of civilians. And soon, the emissary said softly, billions of disciples. The channel cut. Within moments, Nod assault craft began descending toward the planet. GDI acted immediately. Deploy interdiction wings, Rourke ordered. We stopped them before they contaminate the surface. But it was too late. They were not entering to spread Tiberium. They were entering to worship it. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, the skies shifted from the usual traffic streaks to something far more ominous, two completely alien fleets maneuvering overhead. Panic rippled across the planet. Civilians fled to shelters. Holonews spiraled into chaos. The Jedi Council convened immediately. Master Yulari's voice shook. These ships, I sense no connection to the Force within them. Then they cannot be reasoned with, Master Thorin argued. We must defend the planet. But a calm, heavy voice interrupted. It is not the fleets you should fear. It was Jedi Knight Ceres Valen returned from the Undercity with haunted eyes. It is what they're following. The Nod landing. On the lower levels, the same levels already claimed by Crystal, the first Nod strike teams touched down. Their armor gleamed black and red, their visors reflecting emerald light. These were not invaders. They were pilgrims. The crystals responded. They pulsed. They grew taller, sharper, more animated. Nod forces knelt, prayed, sang hymns of Cain, their prophet, their Messiah. Behold, their commander whispered, the birth of the Ecor hub, the sacred heart of the future. They believed Coruscant was chosen, a holy world, a place where Tiberium evolution might finally reach its ultimate form. The infection accelerated as though it recognized them. The GDI landing. High above, GDI dropships pierced the atmosphere in streaks of fire. Rourke's voice thundered across the channels. Weapons free. Contain the infection. Protect the civilians. Do not let Nod fortify any sector. Orca jets screamed downward, locking onto Nod positions. Firestorms ignited across the Undercity. Nod responded with laser turrets and stealth tanks phasing out of shimmering darkness. Coruscant had seen riots. It had seen terrorist attacks. It had seen Sith uprisings. It had never seen this. This was industrialized war. This was Tiberium-era brutality brought to a galaxy of diplomacy and mysticism. The Jedi intervene. The fighting drew the attention of the Jedi quickly. Valen and 3 squads descended into the war zone, lightsabers ignited. Republic troopers attempted to create safe routes for fleeing civilians. In the heart of the chaos, Valen confronted a Nod commander. You end this now, she demanded. This world is not yours to poison. The commander smiled softly behind his mask. It was never ours. It belongs to evolution. He gestured behind her, and Valen turned to see it. A towering Tiberium monolith grown in mere hours now rising through the floor of the lower city. The structure hummed. Energy radiated from it in waves. The Force bent, warped, screamed. This was not just corruption of a world. This was terraforming on a scale that dwarfed the Sith's wildest rituals. The moment everything changes. Above the planet, the dimensional rift flickered once more. A new signal appeared on every scanner. A new presence rippled through the Force, or rather, through the absence the Force was becoming. Something older, something colder, something that regarded Coruscant not as a holy site or a battlefield, but as a harvesting zone. The Scrin had found the breach, and they were coming. Coruscant was dying. Everyone could feel it in the air, in the ground, in the Force. But the truth was far worse than death. Coruscant was changing. It began subtly at first. Temperature shifts beneath the durasteel foundation. Strange harmonic vibrations passing through transport rails. Skyscraper supports humming with a soft green resonance. Animals fled the lower levels. Civilians reported headaches, nausea, dreams filled with crystal landscapes and whispering voices. The Jedi called it a disturbance. GDI called it an escalating contamination event. Nod called it the voice of ascension, but none of them were ready for what came next. The planet's pulse, deep within the crust, beneath thousands of years of construction, far beyond the knowledge of any modern map, a mass of Tiberium reached a critical threshold. It ignited, not like a fire, not like an explosion, like a heartbeat. A deep, resonating thump that rippled upward through Coruscant's metal bones. Street lamps flickered, skyscrapers vibrated. Entire districts felt the tremor rush through them like a wave from the planet's core. Every force sensitive across the city gasped at once. "It's awake," whispered Jedi Knight Ceres Valen, dropping to one knee. This isn't a contamination anymore. Something beneath us is conscious." And the pulse came again, stronger this time. The ground shifted, plates groaning as if under unbearable strain. A second heartbeat, then a third. Coruscant was no longer just reacting to the Tiberium. It was becoming part of it. Cities turned to veins. In the depths, entire undercity blocks began folding inward. Corridors twisted unnaturally as Tiberium crystal sprouted not only from floors and walls, but from the very air as microscopic seeds self-assembled into crystalline structures. A GDI strike team trying to map the spread watched in horror as a support pillar suddenly branched like a tree, splitting into needle-like limbs that crawled upward. "Pull back. Pull." The lieutenant's command cut off as the floor liquefied into glowing green sludge and then solidified again, trapping two soldiers waist deep in crystallized matter. Their suits screamed biohazard warnings as Tiberium seeped inside the armor like vapor. The crystal hummed. The two men screamed, voices turning distorted, choked, then fell silent as their bodies fused into the growth. Their shapes remained visible within the translucent green, like trapped fossils mid-swim. Coruscant had grown its first veins. The monolith rises. But the true horror emerged in the city's center at the heart of the Senate district. The ground began to bulge upward, slowly at first, then violently as durasteel layers cracked and buckled. Towers swayed. Panic erupted across plazas and sky bridges as the very earth convulsed. A Republic shock trooper shouted, "Evacuate the Senate, now!" But evacuation became impossible as a massive crystalline spike erupted upward, shattering the duracrete like glass. It wasn't a spike. It was a column, a monolith. A perfectly geometric structure with fractal symbols pulsing along its faces. It rose and rose, unstoppable, until it pierced the skyline, glowing like an emerald star. Ship crews saw it from orbit. Jedi felt its vibration in their teeth. Nod zealots fell to their knees and wept. "It is the Ichor Tower," they cried. "Prophecy fulfilled." Kane saw this. GDI watched through horrified scanners. "That's not just a structure," a technician whispered. "That's a node, a Tiberium control spire, but on a scale we've never imagined." The monolith exhaled a blast of green light that swept across the city like a solar flare. Every exposed piece of Tiberium across Coruscant pulsed in answer. They were connecting, networking, synchronizing. Coruscant's infection was no longer chaotic. It was coordinated. The Ichor hub had awakened. The Force begins to fail. In the Jedi Temple, the Council gathered, every member pale. "The Force slips through my fingers," Master Yulari said, trembling like an old man. "It is like shouting into a storm. It doesn't hear us." Master Sol Quora clutched his bandaged arm where the Tiberium shard had grazed him days earlier. "It is not the dark side interfering," he whispered, "and not the light side suppressing it." "What then?" asked another master. Quora looked up, eyes wide with a kind of hopeless realization. "The Force is being overwritten." A sudden quake shook the temple from its foundations. Statues toppled. Holocrons flickered erratically. A deafening hum filled the halls as green light seeped through the cracks of the ancient stone. Jedi younglings cried out, covering their ears. Knights stumbled, disoriented. Masters clung to what was left of their senses. Valen stared out the window toward the rising monolith. "The planet is becoming something else," she whispered. "Something that has no place for the Force." Nod's revelation. Within a deep lower-level chamber, the Nod emissary approached a newly grown crystalline throne pulsing with light. Behind him knelt dozens of masked warriors, chanting in unison. The emissary placed his palm on the crystal. It glowed brighter, tendrils of light curling around his arm. "Yes," he murmured. "Yes, I hear you." A voice spoke not in sound, but through vibration, through thought, through resonance. It was not Kane. It was not Nod. It was not human. It was the hub. A planetary-level consciousness forming thought for the first time. Grow. Spread. Ascend. The emissary smiled. "Your will shall be done." GDI's realization. Aboard the Kodiak, General Rourke stared at the planet-wide readings in horror. "This is no longer an outbreak," the science officer said, hands shaking. "It's a metamorphosis." "What's the final stage?" Rourke asked, voice barely above a whisper. The officer swallowed. "In our universe, it ends with planetary collapse or assimilation." Rourke closed his eyes. "And here, with this much energy, with that tower acting as a nucleus?" The officer hesitated, then answered, "Coruscant won't collapse. It will transform into something alive, something intelligent. And then," he looked up, face bloodless, "it will spread across the galaxy." The moment of awakening. As the Ecor Tower reached its full height, the entire planet seemed to inhale. Lights across Coruscant flickered. Every Tiberium vein pulsed simultaneously. The hum grew into a deafening note. Then, silence. For a single heartbeat, Coruscant went dark. No ships. No lights. No sound. No force. Total, absolute void. Then the green pulse hit. A shockwave of emerald light erupted from the tower, racing across the city, blasting into the atmosphere, visible from orbit like a rising second sun. The pulse carried information. Signal. Intelligence. Coruscant's voice. For the first time in history, a planet spoke not through tectonics or weather, but through a structured, complex transmission. A message. Not meant for the Republic. Not meant for the Jedi. Not even meant for GDI or Nod. This signal traveled far beyond them. Across the dimensional breach. Across the void between realities. The Scrin heard it clearly. A beacon. A declaration. An invitation. The Ecor Hub is active. Harvest World online. Come. The Scrin did not travel through space. They folded it. The signal from Coruscant, the pulse of a newly awakened Ecor Hub, rippled through dimensions like a flare thrown across an endless ocean. And somewhere in that ocean, far beyond the comprehension of any species in the Star Wars galaxy, a machine consciousness stirred. Not organic. Not emotional. Not curious. Hungry. Across a lattice of interdimensional networks, the Scrin registered the impossible reading. Planetary-level Tiberium activation detected. A harvest world. A ripe world. A world screaming to be consumed. They did not debate. They did not hesitate. They did not consider diplomacy or resistance. They deployed. The descent of the Leviathans. The dimensional rift above Coruscant expanded once more, not torn open violently like when GDI and Nod entered, but unfolding with geometric precision. The air around the tear crystallized into fractal patterns. Lightning arced along invisible lattice nodes. Gravity itself bent inward like a bowstring being drawn. Then the first Scrin ship emerged. Not sleek like Republic cruisers. Not angular like GDI carriers. Not sinister like Sith warships. It was wrong, a vast spherical construct covered in pulsating nodes, shifting plates, and spines of purple-blue alloy. A Leviathan-class harvester. It dwarfed star destroyers. Alarms erupted across every scanner in orbit. Unknown vessel. Hull composition. Negative match. Gravity distortion increasing. Is that alive? And then more came. Twin-bladed annihilator tripod carriers. Sickle-shaped Storm Rider swarms. Heavy planet cracker platforms machines designed to fracture continents. The fleet blotted out the stars. The Scrin had arrived. The galaxy responds first with fear. Aboard the Republic High Command's orbital platform, Admiral Viren stared at the incoming readings. That can't be one fleet. The mass signatures. It is one fleet, his sensor officer whispered. And it's still growing. The Sith watched from hidden stations, cold fascination gleaming in their eyes. Such elegance, Darth Keelia murmured. A machine mind without hesitation. Lord Verak folded his arms. This will force the galaxy to kneel or burn. Even they felt a twinge of fear. The Jedi, however, felt something worse. When the Scrin fleet crossed into proximity, thousands of Jedi across the galaxy felt an overwhelming emptiness spreading through the Force, not like the void of death, but like the void of absence. The Scrin did not belong to the Force. They were not part of the living galaxy. They were an intrusion, a blind spot, a wound, a cold surgical cut in the tapestry of life. Master Yulari gasped, clutching his chest. This presence, it is not darkness, it is not the light, it is nothing. Valen whispered. They are outside the Force, and that made them the most dangerous adversary the Jedi had ever faced. The Scrin begin the harvest. Above Coruscant, the first Leviathan deployed its tendrils, long mechanical limbs tipped with crystalline claws. They unfurled like petals, each one emitting a low, resonant frequency. The Ichor Tower responded. Green light flared along its length, and a pulse traveled upward into the sky, linking directly with the Leviathan. A bridge, a connection, a synchronization. GDI engineer Kessler stared at the readings in horror. They're interfacing with the hub. What does that mean? Rourke demanded. Kessler swallowed. It means Coruscant is now part of the Scrin network. And then the harvesting began. Purple iron beams lanced downward from the alien ships, not weapons, scalpels. They sliced through skyscrapers not to destroy, but to expose the foundation. Green veins of Tiberium were illuminated, analyzed, catalogued. Scrin harvesters descended like insects, attaching to the exposed veins and siphoning energy. Buildings collapsed into glittering fragments. Roads dissolved into microscopic dust. The very matter of the city was being restructured. Coruscant screamed, not metaphorically, audibly. A shrill, metallic roar echoed across the planet, the sound of a world half alive, half becoming something else. Nod's delusion meets reality. In the lower city, the Nod emissary spread his arms toward the sky. Behold, he cried, our gods arrived to witness our devotion. His troops knelt, chanting the names of Cain. But the Scrin did not acknowledge them. Storm Riders swooped through the air, slicing through buildings with surgical precision. A swarm descended on the Nod camp, analyzing them with cold indifference. The emissary stepped forward, raising his staff. We are the chosen, the heralds of your divine purpose. A tripod landed behind him, the ground cracking under its weight. 3 glowing eyes turned toward him. The emissary smiled beneath his mask. The tripod fired. A single particle beam atomized him instantly, not out of hostility, but because he was in the way. Nod's chanting turned to screams. The Scrin had no concept of allies, only resources. The Republic attempts the impossible. Republic gunships launched from every available hangar. Squadrons of ARC 172nds and V-Wings surged upward to intercept. Commander Thest barked orders. Lock S foils and shift power to shields. Full barrage. The first volley struck the Leviathan. It shimmered, not weakened, merely irritated. Ion bolts slid off its surface like raindrops against a mountain. Proton torpedoes evaporated before impact, neutralized by quantum shielding. Then the Leviathan retaliated. A wave of anti-gravity energy blasted outward. Gunships spiraled helplessly. Fighters folded inward like paper. Entire fleets were hurled across orbit. The Republic had faced Sith armadas, separatist dreadnoughts, pirate warbands, but nothing like this. This was not war. It was harvest. The Jedi strike back. Realizing the Republic fleet would collapse, the Jedi mobilized. Knights boarded intercept shuttles. Masters leaped into the air from spires to launch themselves towards Scrin drones. Padawans stood as shields for fleeing civilians. Valen led a squad onto one of the Scrin's gravity platforms. Their sabers carved through drone armor easily until the drones began to adapt. Metal shifted. Crystalline plating grew thicker. Laser beams redirected. Shields retuned. The Scrin learned them. Valen saw it in the way the drones moved, more precise, more anticipatory. "They're studying us," she gasped. "And evolving." Master Yulari's voice echoed over the comlink. "The Force is slipping from my grasp. Knights, we must retreat at once." But there was nowhere to retreat. The Scrin had enveloped Coruscant in a lattice of energy fields. The planet was sealed. The moment of terror. On the bridge of the Kodiak, alarms reached a crescendo. Kessler turned white. "Oh no, no, this can't be happening." Rourke grabbed him. "What?" "The Icor hub. It isn't being harvested. It's being upgraded." "What does that mean?" Kessler choked out the words. "The Scrin are turning Coruscant into a primary Tiberium nexus. The biggest one ever recorded." Rourke froze. "That would spread Tiberium across the entire galaxy." The Scrin speak. Then something unprecedented happened. A message broadcast across every frequency. Military, civilian, Jedi, Sith, even the Force itself quivered. A voice emerged, mechanical, layered, recursive. "Harvest world confirmed. Icor hub, optimal. Begin phase 2. Galactic conversion protocol initiated." The Scrin had begun the process of turning the Star Wars galaxy into a Tiberium universe. One world at a time. Starting with Coruscant. Coruscant had been many things across its long life. The capital of 1,000 generations. A monument to civilization. A star that never dimmed. Now it was a wound. A beacon. A living engine of Tiberium. And for the first time in galactic history, everyone, Jedi, Sith, GDI, Nod, civilians, smugglers, droids, senators, looked up at the same sky and felt the same emotion. Not hope, not unity, not defiance. Despair. The Scrin fleet encircled the planet completely now, a ring of alien titans orbiting an emerald apocalypse. The dimensional tear pulsed violently, growing wider with every passing hour. Through it came more Scrin structures, harvesters, atmosphere processors, planet-cracking machines designed for one purpose: total planetary conversion. Coruscant had less than a day. Jedi Council, a choice against everything they stand for. Within the collapsing Jedi temple, now half consumed by crystalline roots, the surviving council gathered in a dimly lit chamber. Their voices were weak, the Force slipping through their grasp like water through fractured stone. Master Yulari stood supported by 2 knights. "The Force no longer flows through Coruscant. The planet is blind to us." Valen clenched her fists, her fingertips trembling. "We must evacuate whoever we can and retreat. If the Force abandons us here, we cannot win." Master Aelor shook his head. "Retreat to where? The Scrin will not stop. Tiberium will not stop. Coruscant is becoming the center of a chain reaction that will spread across the galaxy." A terrible silence followed. The question none of them wanted to speak hung above them like a guillotine. "Are we," Yulari whispered, "to destroy the Republic's capital?" The temple shuddered violently as another rupture tore through the foundations. Crystalline tendrils pushed up through the marble floor, glowing with alien life. Valen answered with a hollow voice. "If Coruscant lives, nothing else will." Sith conclave, a terrifying revelation. Deep in a shadowed fortress built into the side of a skyscraper half devoured by Tiberium, Lord Verak and his apprentice Kalia stood before a massive crystalline window. The city outside had turned into a maze of jagged emerald geometry, skyscrapers reshaped into unnatural, fractal towers. Kalia pressed her hand against the glass. "It's beautiful. Horrible, but beautiful." Verak closed his eyes, feeling the hum of the hub beneath his skin. It is evolution made manifest, a galaxy forged anew, but we would not survive it. Kalia turned sharply. "You said we could harness it, bend it." His expression darkened. "I miscalculated. This power cannot be wielded, it can only consume. The Scrin do not conquer worlds, they replace them." Kalia stepped back, horrified. "So, what do we do?" Verak answered with a bitterness she had never heard in him. "We join the Jedi, GDI, and Republic Command, the unthinkable plan." Aboard the battered but still functional Kodiak, General Rourke stood before a war table shimmering with real-time scans of Coruscant's infection. GDI scientists outlined the only option. "The hub is too deeply integrated. We cannot surgically remove it. There is a single method: total planetary annihilation." Rourke asked, voice cold, controlled. "Payload deliverable?" The scientist nodded grimly. "We can combine a GDI ion cannon strike with a Republic fleet-wide concentrated turbo-laser barrage and detonate Coruscant's crust." Senator Talvi nearly choked. "You are proposing we kill 1 trillion civilians?" Rourke stared at the holomap of the Scrin network spreading like a living disease. "If we do nothing, we kill every living thing in the galaxy." Silence. Not even the hum of the engines dared interrupt it. The Joint Council. Enemies become allies. In a secure hangar beneath the Senate ruins, one of the last intact structures, the most unlikely gathering in galactic history took place. Jedi Masters, Sith Lords, GDI Commanders, Republic Admirals, even a few surviving, shell-shocked Nod soldiers. Enemies, ideologies that had fought for millennia, standing in the same room because there was no longer any time to hate. Valen addressed them all. "Tiberium has turned Coruscant into a central node. The Scrin intend to convert the galaxy. If the hub is not destroyed, everything ends." A Sith snarled, "This is madness. Destroy the heart of the Republic?" Verak replied quietly, "This is survival." He nodded at Valen, a Jedi acknowledgement returned by a Sith. A moment no historian would ever believe. Rourke stepped forward. "We time our strike to hit the Ikor Tower's energy cycle. One synchronized barrage, one overwhelming surge, enough to shatter the planet before the Scrin stabilize it." "And if we miscalculate?" a Jedi asked. Kessler answered with shaking hands. "Then Tiberium spreads across the galaxy at hypervelocity, embedding into every hyperspace lane and star system simultaneously." Valen inhaled sharply. "There is no margin for error." The evacuation of a dying world. Ships swarmed the skies in desperate flight. Gunships hauled refugees from collapsing platforms. Jedi carried children through smoke-filled corridors. Sith carved paths through crystalline blockages. This was not order, nor chaos. It was the last breath of a world. Coruscant, half alive, half machine, began to speak again, a grinding, metallic roar as the Ikor Tower shifted into its final stage. The planet's crust fractured. Entire districts folded inward. A singularity of green light flared. Valen looked at the tower and whispered, "It's forming a planetary chrysalis. We're out of time." The final moment, a planet's execution. High above, GDI's ion cannon aligned. Republic star destroyers charged their turbo lasers. Sith warships powered their forbidden reactors. Jedi meditation arrays focused what little force power remained. General Rourke gave the order. "All forces fire." The sky turned white. A column of blinding energy descended from orbit and pierced the Ikor Tower. For a moment, it looked like nothing happened. Then cracks appeared slow, spiderweb fractures racing across the monolith's surface. The hub responded. It unleashed a green pulse that shook the heavens. The Scrin ships reacted instantly, forming an interlocking shield lattice around the planet. But the combined barrage broke through. The tower shattered. The crust split. Valen felt the force surge one last time like a dying gasp as Coruscant's core destabilized. There was no explosion, only a silent implosion of green light. A flash, a starburst. And then, Coruscant was gone. A shattered ring of emerald dust expanded outward like the petals of a cosmic flower. Every Scrin ship within range lost power. Tiberium veins across the system evaporated. The dimensional tear snapped shut. Silence. A silence the galaxy had never heard before. The price? Billions died. Trillions of history vanished. The Republic lost its heart. The Jedi lost connection to a sacred place. The Sith lost a world they coveted. But the galaxy lived. General Rourke, staring at the empty space where Coruscant once burned, whispered, "We saved everything by losing everything." Valen closed her eyes, feeling the force slowly return faint, fragile. "It will take 1,000 years to heal," she murmured. "But better a wounded galaxy than no galaxy at all." Lord Verak stood beside her, silently acknowledging the cost. "Let this be a warning," he said, "not of the Scrin, but of ourselves. The next time something like this comes, we must not be divided." Valen nodded. For the first time in millennia, Jedi and Sith stood shoulder to shoulder, even if only for a moment. Even if only because the alternative was extinction. Coruscant was gone. The galaxy mourned. But the green nightmare had been stopped, at least for now.